Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Ino, Ashoka and Barriss. Huge shout out to hogtheNomadic for this story. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Running. That's his current situation. The 5-year-old Naruto Uzumaki, blonde-haired prankster from hell of Konohagakure, no Sato is running. Why? It's simple. Demonic spawn. Yay. Naruto was being chased by the hypocritical citizens of Konoha. It was just a simple prank, something to really test himself, but not push it too far, but yet the people seemed to have snapped. He was panting, running for his life. He had finished his prank and been walking home to the red light district near the forest of death when they came, storming towards him like a howling pack of hyenas. Running as fast as he could, he barely noticed the fence and sign that he ran past in his intangible fear. Training ground 44. Forest of death. Do not enter. These were the sounds that he woke up to. The fluid of the bacta tank he was in was thick. It was nearly suffocating, and it would be if there was not a breathing mask, forcing air into his lungs whether he wanted to or not. It had been a long time since his last breath, to his memory. Wait. He could breathe again. How would that have been possible? He had been killed by his own apprentice, by the inventions of his own rules albeit in the inner rim. How could he be alive? He intended to find out how. Before he could start moving to leave or call a medical droid however, something called out to him. The Force, once again. But this was different. It wasn't the Force reconnecting with him after his untimely death. It was a call. A cry for help. He may have been a Sith, but this person felt like they not only should be saved by nature, but did not under any circumstance deserve what was happening. So he returned the call. Through the Force, he connected to the boy. He was able to see through his eyes what was about to become tragedy. Down. He had forced through with large effort. The boy ducked, dodging a flying weapon that was coming straight for his fleshy cranium. This was working. There was a small response. Or why there is no time, boy. You will follow my dodge right. My instructions to the last perfection or you will die to the imbeciles. Naruto swiftly nodded, temporarily disorienting the safari. Okay, what do I have to do? You need to jump and also go right until I say not to. He nearly screeched at the boy through the Force. He wondered if the boy here even knew that he was using the Force, but it was inconsequential. The boy felt powerful, was powerful. He had the Force strongly flowing through him, enough suppressed hate to flood a river, and enough purity to control it someday. This boy was the epitome of what a Force user should be able to become, and he probably didn't even know what the Force was. They're on my tie and the boy's voice cut off. Boy, are you alright? He asked, truthfully wondering. He waited a couple of seconds, a minute even, when he heard a series of explosions, a pained shriek, and the sound of pure joyous laughter. Something was incredibly wrong, but he didn't really have time to think about that as he was starting to fade. They're on my tail. Naruto thought towards the weird voice, the villagers indeed trailing fast behind him. Yelling things like demon. Monster. And you killed my wife and kids. These words certainly confused Naruto, but not enough to stop him from running. No, nothing would ever stop him from running. He had noticed that the energy he had felt when he was talking to whoever that man was had disappeared. It was disconcerting now that he had gotten used to it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this untimely distraction caused Naruto to trip over a log he had been planning to jump over. The yelling was getting louder, but Naruto couldn't think about that. He had hit his head on a rock on the other side of the log, and not only was he bleeding from the head, but he was seeing explosions of stars. The demon is down. Attack him while he is weak. Kill him. Kill him, Naruto whispered to himself, suddenly filled to the brim with adrenaline. This still wasn't enough for the 5-year-old Jinchuriki to move. That would be the end of it for his arm. Naruto screamed out, making the QB no Yoko sound quiet when his arm was cut off at the elbow. The villagers grinned. It had been tough to get the poison, a Yaoki blocking type, but they had done it and reveled in the feeling. Just then, Naruto rolled over past a log and fell through a large pit. The villagers simply laughed, covering it up with a stone they found, and walked away. If this had been a normal day, this wouldn't have happened to Naruto, but the Hokage was stuck in meeting after meeting of diplomacy with Kumo since they had tried to steal the Hyuga heiress and the Anbu assigned to him had been put on an official mission signed with the stamp of the Hokage. They never had a clue where he went. That was the sound that greeted Athas, pronounced Athas, when he was walking down the corridor to attend to his master once again. Athas was a mix between an early-era 2-1B series medical droid, a 3PO model protocol droid, and a TC reprogrammed assassin droid. He had been created by his old master, Darth Zana, to protect this place, as well as work on her projects when she was away or dead. He was able to distinguish everything about the body with just a glance, with advanced X-ray vision to see the bones and thermal vision to see body temperatures. He was both the perfect medic and assassin to work for a Sith. He had been declared the servant of whoever would preside in this base, as long as they themselves were a Sith or Sith Lord. Spinning around, he saw a blonde-haired boy with closed eyes, whisker marks, and a missing right forearm. His body broken from the fall with a fully broken ribcage, a broken left arm, a shattered collarbone, and one wonderfully excruciating decimated left leg. And his consciousness fading quickly. His first reaction would have been to eliminate the boy if he hadn't been so off. Not to mention the force-induced growl from his master in the bacta telling him to stop, but the boy felt like he should be healing faster. The way his body was reacting, not only had he never been in this much pain before, but there was also a poison coursing through him, one meant to dull or practically remove healing factors. Intrigued, skeptical, and confused all at the same time from the boy and the message from his master telling him to heal the boy, he picked him up and started moving towards the medbay. Checking the boy over, he diagnosed exactly what the issue was. He was losing blood fast and he was internally bleeding. The boy wasn't going to survive without a miracle. On a whim, Athas decided to take a blood test. He would have to know what type of blood the boy had if he was to see if he could save the boy, right? Athas' eyes lit up with surprise, confusion, and excitement when he realized just what was in this blood. For one, the blood type matched the two most powerful Sith bloods he had, Darth Revan and Darth Nihilus. Not only that, but the DNA itself was practically the perfect human, no flaws at all. The boy he had found was practically immune to all diseases, multiple poisons, and a huge healing factor. Not only that, but after checking the cells of the boy, he was not only compatible with the cells of Nihilus, but he had a midichlorian count of 25,000, and that would go up to at least 31,000 after he put in Nihilus's cells. The boy was ridiculous in the best way, and he now realized something. He was the perfect experiment for his creator's experiment. It's not well known, but Darth Zana had been using this outpost in the middle of nowhere to test if strong specimens could be turned into the Sith race. They had been extinguished millennia ago, but Zana had found material of both of the two types of Sith. Their names had been long forgotten, but one was sturdy in body, and one was more powerful in the Force than reason should allow. These genes had been mixed to create the ultimate Sith, but not a single subject had ever lived through the experiment. Moving the boy to the surgery table, Athas wasted no time in cutting the boy open and resetting his bones for them to heal. He had to redo many cuts and incisions, as well as re-break bones just for them to set right, simply because the boy was healing too fast. After the boy was stable, he went about getting a mechanical arm for him. Unfortunately, none of them would work with the boy, so he had to create one from scratch. The arm was black, with golden piping and accents. Think of the Mechno arm image on Wikipedia. It was also not natural, as the wrist could rotate 360 degrees if needed in a battle. It had pressure power that was limitable by a dial on the inside of the attaching area to the arm to change the power. It could go from the same power that a 5-year-old would have to 1,500 pounds of pressure power. The dial was placed on the inside because Athas had a feeling that his master would want to train the boy, and even if not, the boy could just take it off and change it at will. Accessing some of the pre-made Sith runes Darth Zana had left, the arm itself was now able to channel the Force through it for abilities such as Force Lightning, as well as being locked to only the user's genetic strand, so only he could use it. It could also grow and shrink as the user did, so that as the boy himself grew, he could keep using the same arm. Attaching the arm and slipping a black glove with buckles over it, since the glove wasn't liquid-proof and the boy would have to go into bacta, think Anakin Skywalker's arm covering, won't stay like this long. Athas got to work changing the boy's DNA. This would be a long process, taking up to 1 month, and during the process, his master awakened. BSHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHBSHHHHH. After the distinct sound of his breathing disappeared, he opened his eyes and realized his mask had been released. A pressure appeared on his chest suddenly, he realized that he was floating, and he could not breathe. Before he could do anything to combat this strange feeling, the sound of bubbling filled his liquid-filled ears, making him look up to see the liquid he was in start to drain. That was it, he was in bacta. It would make sense after all, he was also in it last time he woke up. The bacta continued to drain, reaching the floor and leaving through the vents in the bottom of the tank, and the glass of the tank opened up as a door to the outside. Stretching his long slumbering muscles, he felt as if the dawn of a new age was upon him with the way his spine crackled, his muscles strained, and his bones creaked like they themselves could actually creak. For that infinitesimal moment of stretching, it felt like his body was bursting into flames with the infinite amount of ache spread throughout his body. Finally stepping out of the bacta tank he was in, he took a look at his surroundings. Around him was a large room. Dark durasteel flooring, flood vents near the corners, deep crimson supports to help the navy walls keep the rune-decorated ceiling from falling upon the inhabitants of the room. His bacta tank sat the furthest from the door, which was in the middle of the far wall of the rectangle-shaped room. In the back right corner stretching to the middle of the right wall was various alchemy equipment. This included tables with armors, swords, and other weapons and equipment that would be useful. On the left wall was a cauldron chock full of potions and liquids that creeped him out. If there was one thing he never understood about his apprentice, it was the need to experiment and the need to use alchemy. Runes he could use and understand, but alchemy was not in his understanding, nor was it something he wanted to understand. Down a couple of stairs were 2 Sith tombs, a rocky tan color with Sith runes covering the sides to preserve the bodies. Walking down the stairs to read the names, he was shocked with what he read. Here lies Darth Nihilus, a crazy planet destroyer and a powerful warrior. Here lies the corpse of Darth Revan, a good friend and a balanced force user. His questions lied for why people long dead were sitting in front of him for a couple of moments, but not forever. Remembering the boy he had helped guide, his head shot up to the nearest exit. On the sides of the door were 2 stands. The stand on the left was more like a table, and it held his signature battle armor. On the right was an actual stand. In the stand was his lightsaber from the days of old. It looked the very same as the day he had died with it. The saber was a single-bladed curved saber. Name of the Sith will be later in the story. If you want an image of his blade, look up his name's lightsaber in Wikipedia. The igniter was golden, tapering inwards to a notch that went straight back out in a silver color. The hilt went down the same for about 1 more centimeter before curving gently. From here, there was a simple notched grip that turned into a smooth metal. Along from that, the hilt curved one last time. The lightsaber pommel was about as fat as the igniter. The igniter tapered into a tip, and on that tip was a ring for attachment to a belt or other place of holding a saber. The armor was much like the armor from Vegeta from the older days, but instead of silver plate armor on the chest, pelvis, forearms, legs, and feet with brown robes atop it, the cloak itself was black and had a hood. The plate armor colored as a deep reflective crimson. This armor was modeled off of the old Republic troopers, and the armor itself could survive anything from upwards of 3 blaster shots in one place, or a large amount in multiple to a mid-close range explosion. Jumping deftly to the door, he put on underclothing, the armor, and finally the cloak, while grabbing his lightsaber and clipping it to the inside of his right sleeve, stayed still for a moment to find where the boy he had sensed was, or if he was even still alive. If he had recalled properly, that mob of what could practically be called heretics were trying to kill the boy in brutal ways. Sensing a force presence in the base, he reached out for it. He sensed the boy, but then he sensed something more. He sensed something he had only truly felt in passing. He sensed the race of the Sith. The race that deemed themselves the true heirs to the Sithari position and the most powerful force users in the entire galaxy. How would a Sith have ended up in this base? It wasn't of consequence, as it had the same signature as the boy. Maybe it had always been the boy, he just couldn't notice in his weakened state while in the bacta tank so far from him. Walking through the corridors, the figure found his way to the entry to the medbay. On his way there, he had passed the doorways to rooms labeled storage, enchanting, personal quarters, apprentice quarters, and hangar. The last one was the one that he peeked into, and he was not disappointed with the variation of useful ships that lied there. A G4 Rigger class light freighter, just making the numbers smaller, imagine aging or older versions of the real ones. 4-star forged Sith fighters that reminded him of the description Darth Revan gave of his ship in his holocron, a small fleet of CR-37 corvettes, and a Harrower-class dreadnought, waiting to be filled to the brim with a willing and capable military crew. Moving past that, the figure peeked inside to find a medical droid that looked like it was somehow mutated into a 3PO, and an assassin droid was working diligently on a machine. Athas had been scanning the new cells and DNA of one Uzumaki Naruto, not that he knew his name, when he heard almost ghostly footsteps at the door and felt a presence through his scanners. He didn't bother turning, he already knew who it was. "I'll be right with you, master." Who knew these cells and DNA could be so interesting and yet so disturbing? He had said this in a jovial way, but only felt his master get slightly agitated. Fortunately for Athas, his master did have some control over his emotions and did not crush him into tiny puddles of paste, but instead simply stopped observing the area around him and focused on cleaning his lightsaber. Completing his scan, Athas would have gaped if he had a mouth, but made a gasping sound anyway. By the results of this test, the procedure had worked more than it ever should have. There were some minor and some nearly major issues with the Sith DNA that he had placed into the boy, but the issues had simply become improvements. Not only that, but the count of the boy's midichlorians went higher than the expected amount. 37,000 by a certain perspective was a very small number, but when it came to the count of midichlorians per cell, it was absolutely confounding. "Master, you must see these results." Athas called out. In mere moments, the near-ghostly Sith figure was at the side of Athas with his arms crossed. Those arms dropped when he saw the results of this test. They had to be false. Fake. There was no way that someone could have 37,000 midichlorians. Hell, he only had close to 18,000 himself. The ridiculous amount that these cells had was on an unparalleled level. Not only that, but the cells were somehow the Sith race. That should not even be possible. From what he could sense, this planet was covered in only humans, and the signature he had felt from the boy he had guided was distinctly human when he was in the bacta tank, but now it was Sith. What is your designation, droid? The figure asked, needing information about the happenings around himself. I am MDM-018342777, my lord, but I am usually referred to as Athas. The droid said. Where are we located? I have not been on a planet that is inhabited only by humans. The figure asked, facing the droid and recrossing his arms. We are located on P001879, also known to the inhabitants as Earth, but to my creator as Ebonir. The droid explained, gaining a strange look from the Safari. I see you are confused by the comment I made on my creator, my lord. The droid continued. My creator is Darth Zana, or Rain. This gained a contemptuous look from the Dark Lord. He had not heard that name in a long time, nor did he want to. What could have possibly happened to the universe during the time I was away? He asked, hoping for the best. You see, during his time in the bacta tank, he had time to be calm. This made him realize that while the Sith philosophy was important, to understand the Force you had to be able to use all of it, meaning the light and the dark. Well, my lord, your apprentice killed you and gained an apprentice. This cycle continued until now. The Jedi think the Sith to be extinguished. There are more than 2 Sith currently, and your rule has been broken only during the ending parts of the cycle, when an apprentice takes an apprentice before killing his master and becoming the master. The current Sith apprentice calls himself Darth Maul, and the current master is unknown. The droid explained, his lord standing next to him nodding along the tail. This would make sense, this was the way he had engineered it to be after all. That story still did not explain why the signature of the boy had changed. He had seen the DNA and the cells, but whose were they? Athas, what cells are that? The legendary warrior asked, shifting slightly onto his right foot in preparation for anything. Oh, it's quite simple, master. You see, after your time, Darth Zana had a project. The project was to essentially revive the Sith race, as it was nearing extinction so much that even she could not find one, only the cells, DNA, and structures of one. She eventually tried to turn different types of humanoids into Sith, but none could survive. That was until this random boy fell into the base. He was covered in injuries, and his right forearm was completely cut off, but I noticed that if not for the poison in his system, he would have healed the majority of his wounds perfectly. I decided to finish Darth Zana's experiment since this boy has such a high healing factor. I have made him into a Sith, and he has a highly advanced robotic arm to boot. The arm even has Beskar plating to resist lightsaber attacks or grazes. Unfortunately, his fall was not gracious to him as his jaw was muddled and broken beyond repair. His lungs got damaged severely as well, so I decided that I would put the mask of Darth Malgus onto him, as it fixes the problems and honors Darth Zana's idol. Athas explained in detail, causing the figure standing next to him to realize just who was changed. This droid had changed the boy with such medium force power into an even higher being than himself. This still didn't explain how exactly this happened, since the only midichlorians he could sense on this planet were coming from 9 different individuals who were making no use of them and only had around 4,000 per cell. Even then, when he had sensed the boy, he only had around 9 to 10,000 midichlorians per cell in the forest he was running through. Even better, sir, Athas cut into his lord's thoughts, I was able to activate the boy's inactive midichlorians. You see, he has the same blood type as Darth Revan and Darth Nihilus, so I simply filled him with that blood and some of their cells. Overall, the boy is 90% pureblood Sith, 3% Darth Nihilus, 3% Darth Revan, and 4% human. I did not want to override his normal human DNA fully, or that could cause a breakdown of multiple parts of the body. The droid was excitedly rambling about this, on and on, but stopped when he noticed his lord's stare. This stare quieted him down very quickly. He had only seen it a couple of times, and did not want to see it again. As suddenly as the stare was put into effect, it was decommissioned. What changed about him? The Dark Lord asked simply. There could be many changes from a human becoming a Sith. He wanted to know what would happen. Well, master, Athas started, he has improved cell regeneration, even higher than what he had before the operation, which was already unfathomable. His ribs have merged together to create a fully protective cage around his internal organs, and the organs that would usually need the gaps in the ribs have been altered to accommodate this. The only organ that couldn't be changed due to damage was the lungs, hence the mask. 4 of his senses have been changed, including sight, smell, hearing, and taste. His brain is now able to process things at 8 times the rate it used to be able to. The boy seemed to have some sort of rune limiting his brain's capacity, so I removed that. At this, the Dark Lord raised his eyebrows, but allowed the droid to continue. The boy has new systems for clotting and pain suppression, and his ears, mouth, tongue, and facial structure has changed to that of a Sith. His feet, on the surface, look nearly the same, but he has 2 toes instead of the regular human 5 now, and he has perfect balance. The pigmentation of his skin has turned to a crimson color, a touch darker than a Sith lightsaber. His muscles have become significantly denser, and his bones and nervous system have accommodated for this. His voice is deepened, his skin is tough enough to survive really anything under a vibroblade, and he is overall an absolute tank. He will also have a maximum height of 2.02 meters, or as the people of Ebonir call it, 6 foot 7 inches, just about half a head taller than you. His aging will also be quicker, and his body will reach full maturity by the age of 15. Oh, and his appendix has been removed and replaced by linings in his intestines to counteract the lack of one. Athas took a large proverbial breath. That was a large amount to say in one sitting. So basically, the boy is stronger, faster, smarter, unable to lose balance, physically tough, able to survive a fall from space into the atmosphere at terminal velocity, can heal faster, and can reduce poisons to nothing in minimal time. The masterful warrior asked, betraying his status by almost gaping at the droid in front of him. Nobody should have that much power, but this 5-year-old did. Where is the boy now? Simply look behind you, sir. The droid stated, and they both turned around to find a red-skinned boy with black hair. He was floating in the bacta tank with a breathing mask on. He was just as Athas had described him. He would be the perfect apprentice. Suddenly, the serene look the boy had turned to one that could be described as intense thinking, brow furrowed and the mouth turned into a thin line. Then, slowly, the boy woke up, his eyes slitted and sulfuric with a red ring around the outside. Naruto felt like he had been on fire forever. He felt aches all over his body, penetrating his very being as if a sword was digging into every part of his body. He attempted to open his eyelids, which felt like they were being held down by bricks of gold, and instantly closed them. While it was bright outside, there was also some sort of liquid he could feel around himself. It was heavier than water, but lighter than something like molten lava. It caused a small stinging in his eyes, but not too extreme. Naruto tried to open his eyes again, and he was met with a very peculiar sight. Something that looked like a metal puppet was talking. It was talking to a robed and armored man. He had a hood on, so he could not see the face of this man, but the man looked to be wearing some sort of red metallic armor with robes over it. Suddenly, the robed figure was looking at him, piercing his very soul with sulfuric yellow eyes that had a red ring around the outside. The talking puppet thing also turned to him and went over to some sort of button assortment. A hissing sound with bubbling came to Naruto's attention, and when he looked up, the fluid was draining from wherever he was. It looked to be some sort of glass encasing. The liquid passed his face, and he noticed the mask that had been giving him air was no longer needed, but when he went to take it off, he could not pry it off his face. Unfortunately, that did not distract him from his distinctly red hand he had somehow gained. Before he could really think on this, he heard a muddled voice enter his ears. "Hello, boy." The talking puppet, which still freaked him out, was now talking to him. "How do you feel?" This time the voice was much clearer. Instead of responding in proper, Naruto asked the questions he felt were the most prudent towards the situation he was finding himself in. "What in the nine-tailed hell are you, and why is my hand red?" Naruto asked, although it came out as a deep baritone sound, think somewhere between Matt Mercer and Darth Vader, that should not at all be coming out of the mouth of a 5-year-old. "My name is Athas. I suppose your world does not have droids. The best way to describe me in your words would be a puppet that is controlled by programmed protocols instead of those strings you use." The now named Athas explained. He continued, "And your hand is red for a completely different reason." You see, he was interrupted by the dark figure that was still staring at him. "Athas changed your entire body. You are now stronger, faster, have heightened senses, and a couple of other features, but the two most important are your appearance, and that you will mature fully at age 12. Naruto's eyes bulged, and he noticed that he could see much more clearly than he used to be able to. He looked down at his body, and his body was, well, red. He felt a lot taller and estimated he was roughly 1.55 meters tall, 5 foot 1 inches, compared to his previous 1.15 meters, 3 foot 9 inches. He felt a little weird breathing, and when he touched his hair, he noticed it was extremely long, reaching his lower back and nearly tickling his waist. It was also not his signature blonde, but it was a dark obsidian black color, with hints of purple wine coloring at the ends. RGB 44:4:28 for those wondering. He also noticed that he was able to think much clearer than he could have regularly thought. Heading closer to the glass, Naruto jumped a little in shock when he looked at his face. He looked older, yes, almost like an extremely fit 15-year-old, an intimidating mask with black piping, a reflective diamond-shaped front, and a vent inside the diamond, hiding his jawline, sharp eyes. And deep lines on his face that resembled those he had seen on a boy called Itachi he met in the village once. His eyebrows seemed to have turned into flesh, mere bumps compared to hair. The most shocking part of his appearance, to him, was his eyes. They were the very same sulfuric yellow with a red ring around the outside he had seen on the dark figure in front of him. When he looked down again, he observed that his body was yet again very much aged forward. His body was lean, not built like in a gym, but something that would resemble hard work and muscles to be used in battle, instead of in heavy lifting. When he looked over at his right arm though, he found something even more shocking. To his memory, he had his right hand cut off, but there seemed to be a gloved hand there. How would that even be possible? He didn't have a hand. Naruto flexed a hand, noticing that when the tips of his fingers touched his palm, he could barely feel it and there was a dull metallic thud that resounded louder than it should have. Swiftly, he looked up to the figure, who had lowered his hood to show a nearly green face with a hook nose and sharp vertical black markings, going over oval-shaped black markings on his eyes. "What have you done to me?" Naruto asked, "And who are you?" "Me?" That dark figure asked, chuckling afterwards for a moment. "No, I did not do anything to you. It was Athas that did this. You lost your arm in the chase I was attempting to guide you through and you fell into this base. I was unfortunately healing in a tank alike to the one you are in right now, called a bacta tank for the healing liquid that is inside. What was done to you was a repair job and an upgrade, if you will. The mask on your face is a remedy to the damaged lungs and face you gained from the fall you took, your arm was replaced with a mechanical one, and your body has changed to that of a race called Sith. All will be explained later." The warlord continued, cutting off whatever Naruto was about to say or ask. "As for who I am?" The figure gained a small smirk at this. "I am the Safari, Darth Bane." "Eh? Safari? Am I supposed to know you?" Almost immediately, both Athas and Bane comically face-faulted. Recovering from the discovery that he wasn't known on this world, Bane simply said, "No, you aren't. But you will." This was said in a sort of dark tone, but Naruto couldn't be scared. He had to keep up his act of being stupid, right? It was the only way he could handle the situation, it was the way he could always rely on when he absolutely needed to. "But sir," and he trailed off. He was talking, but it certainly didn't sound like him. "Wait, is that noise my breathing?" Naruto said this somewhat meekly, although it sounded more like a growl, since the mask deepened and somewhat mechanized his voice so much. There was this sound that kept going on every time he breathed, it was like the sound of normal breathing, but it was pronounced and sounded strained. Think a quieter version of Darth Vader damaged breathing. Athas jumped a little at this. "I suppose there is one thing that I forgot, I apologize. Allow me to get closer to you so that I can fix that pesky sound." The hybrid droid asked, hoping that Naruto would somewhat trust him. It did work. "Well, I suppose all you've done is help me so far, even if it was in a rather twisted way." "Go ahead," Naruto stated. This was very true, as Naruto was, well, whatever he was. He had heard the figure in front of him call it a Sith, but he didn't quite know what that was. Speaking of that, he figured it prudent to ask. "Bane, what exactly is a Sith?" Naruto asked this, but didn't expect Bane to chuckle. This was a funny question to him, since there were two types of Sith. He was considering the option of telling him what the Sith Force users were and not the race, but considering the immeasurable confusion on the boy's face, that wouldn't have been wise. "Well. Naruto Uzumaki. Well, Naruto, a Sith is a race from outer space. Before you ask questions about outer space, let me tell you more. From where I come from, space travel is very common. There are hundreds of planets in an area we call rims in the galaxy. There is the core, the most important, wealthy, populated, and lawful area in the galaxy, and it's considered the middle. There is then the inner rim, the higher class, but not quite extremely rich planets. There is the middle rim, which when compared to a house, is someone who doesn't have to worry that much about money, but can't buy extremely expensive things, and the outer rim, which is filled with the scum of the galaxy. The planet we are on, Ebonir, is far past the outer rim. That doesn't make it scum, since space travel hasn't touched it, but simply uneducated. Bane explained, dumbing it down a bit since he remembered he was still technically talking to a 5-year-old. Luckily, he didn't need to explain anything, and Naruto simply motioned for him to continue with a short nod. The Sith race comes from a planet called Korriban. Korriban was their home, it's where they all grew up. This race unfortunately went extinct roughly 4,900 years ago. In the galactic year system, the current time is called 33 BBY, and each year, it gets lower. You have been turned into a Sith not only because they are extinct, but because you are the only person who could survive the operation. You seem to have an unnaturally large healing factor. This race also had a very potent connection to the Force. Bane further explained. This got Naruto to raise an eyebrow and ask a simple question. What is the Force? This would have surprised Bane, but there was no space travel on this planet, so they might have simply not discovered that. Either that or the Force died out with this planet of humans besides those specific other 8 people. The Force is an energy field created by all living beings in the universe. The Force surrounds us, binds us, penetrates us, and gives us the very life we have. The Force, for some people, is a source of power. It can be what makes mythical powers come to life. I like to think of the Force as a coin because of what it can represent. There is the heads, or light side. Then there is the tails, or dark side. Finally there is the edge of the coin, or as I call it, true balance. The light side means to cut off all attachment and lay waste to your emotions. To be of the dark side means to embrace all negative emotions with a passion untold by generations. To be a balanced individual means to stand on the very edge of both, to not lose yourself to darkness, but to not be engulfed and lost in the light. Each side grants certain abilities. Objectively, the Sith are stronger. Bane got cut off by Naruto childishly raising his hand, but he raised it too high and pulled a muscle with a yelp due to his new strength. He looked at his arm with a pouting betrayed look, making Bane chuckle for the first time in a long time. Yes. How are the Sith stronger if they aren't a part of these 3 you are talking about? Naruto asked, curious. Oh, I do not mean the race you are a part of. The Sith race was in tune to the dark side, and so users and followers of the dark side called themselves by the same name, Sith. As I was saying, the dark side is stronger from a certain perspective. It gives physical power and force powers, violent abilities, like launching lightning out of your fingertips, very capable to abolish foes. The problem for the Sith is their minds, as they are overwhelmed with darkness and could fall into insanity. On the other hand, the Jedi do not have as much physical power, only having telekinesis and force powers that rely not on emotions, but they are very centered mentally and can control themselves in a superior fashion to normal people. From a certain perspective, the Jedi are the good guys and the Sith are the bad guys, but it's never that simple in life. Bane explained, nearly running out of breath at the end. It was hard to talk for that long. Surprisingly, the boy looked like he understood. Naruto did understand, but he had a more pressing matter on his mind, at least in his opinion. When are you going to let me out of this bacta tank? Naruto asked, and as soon as he said that, a segment of the glass in front of him made a snap hiss sound and lowered itself into a slit in the ground. Naruto tried to move forward, to walk, but he ended up doing the splits when he moved his leg too far. Making a very girlish scream and getting up very slowly massaging his now red family jewels, Naruto realized he probably needed to give his body and mind a decent amount of time to adjust to the changes he received in the operation. And now he was realizing something even more. He was able to think clearly. More clearly than he ever could, or should for that matter. He had never used words that big in his thoughts or in his sentences. Naruto asked about this. Well, it seemed that some sort of rune was placed on the back of your head to suppress some sort of memory, but it also had side effects on your brain, making you less intelligent. Try to think back on this, maybe there is an incident. Bane asked, hoping to uncover the reason for the rune. Naruto did just that and flinched rather hard. He remembered being chased, being cornered in a dead-end alley. It was about a year ago, and he was crucified, burned alive, and stabbed in a plethora of different ways. It was not a comfortable memory to have resurface, and it showed on his face with a grimace on Naruto's face. I'll assume it was not a good memory. Bane asked, getting a slow nod from Naruto. I won't pry then. Now that you're here though, I wanted to offer you something. Naruto snapped out of his memories at this, giving his full attention to Bane. I want to learn about your world and train you. Bane stated, surprising Naruto greatly. Nobody from his village would have ever actually wanted to train him, and if they did, it would have been to sabotage him. What? Why would you be interested in training me? I'm just some random 5-year-old. Naruto exclaimed. Calm yourself, child. I want to train you because of your potent connection to the Force. Even the strongest of Force users, such as I, have around 18,000 midichlorians per cell, which are little parts that reside in your cells and enhance your connection to the Force. You only generally need about 5,000 to become a Jedi or Sith. You have 37,000, which basically means you have the potential to become the most powerful being alive. That is why I want to train you. You also strangely seem like the person to have the absolute drive to succeed in life. Bane explained, getting Naruto to calm down rather quickly and straighten his posture a bit. He was slouching, but yet he was also supposed to have the potential of the most powerful life form in the universe. There were just 2 questions that he had. Who are you, really? I don't know anything about you. Naruto asked, making Bane smirk. It was incredibly childish, but the question served to show that the boy was not just curious, but also wanted to gather information before making a decision. I am Darth Bane, Dark Lord of the Sith, creator of the rule of two, born to the world Korriban. I have led armies, killed hundreds of Jedi, and revolutionized the Sith. The Dark Lord said in a grandiose fashion, spreading his arms in an inviting way. I only have one more question then. Naruto stated. When do we start? Sitting in his large ivory tower was an old man, in his 60s, balding with age, covered in cancer spots. He was short, his hair was white, and he had wrinkles and lines covering his face like the plague. He had a pointed nose with flared nostrils and black eyes like the void. Hanging loosely from his mouth was his trusty pipe, always there when he needed it. Barriss in Sarutobi was an old man, and he wasn't getting any younger. This was only getting proven again and again every time something bad happened, and this was not any different. About a month ago, his favorite little surrogate grandson, Naruto Uzumaki, disappeared. This was a rather distressing situation. Naruto was valuable to him, but to the council and to Danzo, he was a monstrous weapon to be used at will. Things were about to get a lot worse, and he didn't even know it. All he knew right now was that he wanted to be at home sleeping instead of doing paperwork. It was the dead of night, the crickets chirping and the toads croaking. About 150 meters or 500 feet away from the gates of Konohagakure no Sato was Naruto Uzumaki, his feet stalwart. As it turns out, the base inside of the Forest of Death had an exit outside of the village walls, and this was what he would use to make his story a bit more convincing. He was wearing a simple black cloak, hood up. Think of the Supreme Inquisitor set from SWTOR, he also had a glove on his left hand, his right already covered by the buckled glove, boots, and every part of his skin was covered in clothing besides his face. His head was down, cloaking all but his breathing apparatus. Secretly, his face couldn't be revealed from the shadows due to a force power put on his cloak's hood by Bane. He had been at the base for a short amount of time, but he had accepted that Bane would be the person training him for a few years. Before he left the medbay, Athas had turned his hair into dreads. The hair was simply too long to fit into a cloak, and so this was the solution. He had been shown around the base and had the technology briefly explained to him. He still had an incredible amount to learn, like how the internal systems of that Harrower-class dreadnought worked, but that could be saved for later. For now, he needed to give the Hokage some information and lay low. Walking up to the gate guards, his cloak billowing in the wind, he watched as they tensed, hoping to not have an attack on their hands. Name? The one he knew as Izumo asked, the tails of his bandana-styled headband blowing in the wind. Uzumaki, Naruto. Naruto said, his voice stunning the two. Not only should he not be this tall, but he also shouldn't sound like this. And what was with the mask and that hood? There was no reason for him to hide himself from them. Why were you out of the village, kid? Aren't you supposed to stay inside? Kitetsu asked, relaxing his muscles. The supposed newcomer had freaked him out a little bit, and the dark feeling that mask was giving off was really not helping that. The boy looked and walked different, giving off the impression that he was moving with the shadows, but yet confident as well. Got jazzed out. An unfortunate situation occurred, and now I need to talk to the old man. Naruto said, his voice making the two shiver again. Frightfully, the two gate guards let Naruto pass into the village, not even truly sure that it was Naruto. Luckily or unluckily in Naruto's case, Anbu was on the case. The guards that were for check-in were the visual layer of defense for Konoha, but the Anbu stationed in the watchtowers were the less visible. Dog, also known as Kakashi Hatake, had been worried. His little blonde charge had been missing for a while. This ominous stranger, wearing a hood and some sort of advanced mask with tubing, was claiming to be him, and he was not buying it at all. Naruto was walking through town. It was exactly as he remembered it, and why wouldn't it be? From his perspective it had only been about 3 days since he left, even if it had been truly a month. The part that slightly saddened him was the population, while a bit wary of him, was looking upon him considerably warmly compared to the cold sneers he received when he was known. Turning down an alley to use his normal quick route to the Hokage's office, he was quickly faced with a blur that turned into a dog-masked Anbu. Identify yourself. I know you are not Uzumaki Naruto, you are too tall. Dog said, sounding a lot more confident and stoic than he felt on the inside. This man was creepy. The mask was the only part of the person he could see, he couldn't even truly identify the gender of the being. Being brought out of his thoughts, Dog listened. Oh, but I am myself, Anbu. An unfortunate incident including being chased out of the village and a seal created by Kami, knows who left me a little, changed. Enough that only Jiji-chan should know what happened. Naruto said this in as bright and peppy a voice he could, but the tone his voice was giving off more sounded like an insane victim. And I promise, I only sound insane because of the mask. Naruto added, trying to assure the Anbu that he was him. Dog was a little bit stunned. Nobody in the village called the Hokage Jiji-chan besides Naruto Uzumaki. But should he really trust this person? He hasn't given a reason not to be trusted, after all. Making his decision, Dog spoke. I will escort you to Hokage-sama's chambers, where you will report to him. Do not make any sudden moves. That is acceptable. Were the simple words spoken. Continuing his trek towards the Hokage, Naruto strode quickly. Taking twists and turns through the dark alleys of Konoha, ducking under the clotheslines that held the clothing of men, women and children alike, and passing the sleeping street life, Naruto quickly found himself in front of the grandiose building of the Hokage. Reasonably, the Hokage should not be in his office right now, but he was working late on paperwork. The building itself was quite simple. The Hokage Tower was a large circular red building with 2 other circular buildings attached to the back left and right, 4 floors, and 2 layers of light brown overhanging roofing. On the roof of the middle tower were 6 silver beams, all pointing toward the middle of the flat roof. Twisting the doorknob of the large oak door, Naruto entered the tower, observing a quick silver blur, indicating that the dog Anbu had entered with him. Immediately, all eyes were on him. Naruto scanned the main room of the Hokage Tower. There were various people in the room he had been so acquainted to. The secretary of the Hokage, the Chunin working at the mission's desk, a Jonin lounging in the waiting seat, and a couple civilians spread across the room. The room had become eerily quiet, and so Naruto, being the prankster he was, decided to be funny. Boo. Naruto deadpanned, making the younger civilians jump and the Jonin laugh and turn back to his book. Chuckling a bit, Naruto strode towards the secretary's desk. The secretary was writing away at a paper, preparing documents for the Hokage. I have an appointment with the Hokage. Naruto stated simply. The secretary looked up and immediately looked like she dismissed the idea that it was possible. Of course, this would make sense, she would have never seen him before. No hun, I would remember a fella like you. She said, smiling sweetly. Suddenly, a white blur appeared next to Naruto, turning into dog. Oh, that type of appointment. Go on then. The secretary stated, schooling her face. Usually, meetings sanctioned by Anbu weren't all that good. Moving past the desk, Naruto moved swiftly towards the thin corridor that held the stairs. He quickly found himself at the 4th floor. This was the floor that held the Hokage's office, or as he liked to call it, the safe house, since nobody would dare attack him when he was in the presence of the Hokage. This was, of course, proven wrong when someone decided to figure out the time when he usually burst into the Hokage's office, schedule a meeting, and then attempt to kill him when he ran into the office. Naruto was very lucky that the old Sarutobi still processed some of his old combat prowess, or else he would be heartless, literally. Naruto walked up to the ornate door of the Hokage's office and rapped his knuckles against the door 5 times, not enough to sound hysterically urgent, but too much to be comfortable or lazy. As he knocked, the silvery form of the dog Anbu, gravity-defying hair along for the ride, flashed to his right side. The tired-sounding voice of the Hokage bounced off the walls and went into Naruto's cloaked ear beeps, cleanly translating to enter. Naruto decided to do exactly that. Having just started smoking, Hiruzen Sarutobi was not expecting one of his most trustworthy Anbu to walk in with a dark cloaked figure with a mask over his face. Dog, do you want to explain this? The wise Hokage asked, wishing for an explanation. Schooling his masked face, Dog replied. This man has walked within Konoha's walls, claiming he is Uzumaki Naruto, speaking like said blonde, and requesting an audience with you sir. I cannot tell if he is or isn't the Uzumaki, so I allowed him to come to you. Dog reported this in complete and rather impressive monotone. The eldest Sarutobi frowned, but inside he was extremely confused. Naruto would never walk in calmly and knock. It could be his lucky day, it could be an impostor, or it could be worse. Waving his hand in a seemingly lazy way, there were 5 silver flashes and Dog, along with the other hidden Anbu members, had disappeared from the room. Turning his face to an impenetrable stone, he popped the most important question in the room to the cloaked figure standing in his room. Who are you? I will say it again. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Jiji. Naruto said to his surrogate grandfather, his frown hidden by his mask. If you're Naruto, show your face. Hiruzen said this, and the man in front of him flinched a bit. This might not go well. That's the thing, Jiji. You might not like what you see. Naruto said, his voice laced with slight trepidation, childish trepidation that the Hokage picked up on. And why not? Because I've been turned into a monster of many proportions. Prepare yourself. This was confusing to Hiruzen for a second, and only a second. The reason that this confusion did not last long. Naruto started to remove his hood and immediately caught the full attention of the old man. Revealed was his red skin and yellow eyes. Revealed was his completely different complexion and black hair, revealed was the Sith. The pipe in the wise Hokage's mouth dropped to the floor with a dull thud, but to him, it sounded like the crash of a million fireballs against an earth wall. I see you have observed me. Allow me to explain before you attempt to attack me. Naruto asked, raising his hands a bit at his hips. Getting over his intense shock and schooling his face, Hiruzen said, you cannot be Naruto. Naruto has blonde hair, blue eyes, and he's a lot shorter. This was an expected outburst. How could it not, after all, the old man was seeing a new race for the first time. The only thing slightly similar would be the Hoshigaki clan, which had blue skin and shark-like features. All a part of the story, old man. Naruto explained briefly. Schooling his face quickly, here is in Sarutobi, leader of the most powerful ninja village, the Hokage that survived the nine-tailed fox, and the professor said only one word. Explain. So you're saying that you got jazzed out of the village by the civilians, fell into a stronghold, got your bones broken, got turned into an alien that you call a Sith, and there is a person willing to train you, but since he's alien, I can't meet him since I might kill him with contamination. Hiruzen questioned, hoping he got the whole story. This was absolutely wrong though. No, he's not an alien. He's a human, but with a different immune system. You also missed this. Naruto said, and immediately piqued Hiruzen's interest, as he was given a nod to go on with what he was going to do. Standing up from the chair he had been lounging in for the past few days, Naruto put his right arm in front of him horizontally and started unbuttoning his glove. This interested the wrinkled Hokage, was he just going to show a red hand? As Naruto pulled off the glove, the old Hokage got increasingly worried about Naruto. After all, he didn't think hands were supposed to be made of the same materials of kunai. Apparently this showed on his face, because Naruto started to explain. One thing that I managed to neglect in my explanation of what happened was the fact that those civilians cut off my right arm. Fortunately, the facility that I landed in had a mechanical one, much stronger than a human or even a Sith arm, but only if I want it to be. You also missed the improvements to my body, and the obvious. Naruto said, motioning towards his mask. I now have perfect balance, better senses, more cognitive ability, more resilient skin, better bones, improved organs, more strength, an estimated maximum height of 6'7", and I get to age maturity at 14 years old. Basically, by the time I reach the end of the academy, my body and mind will be the equivalent to a 25-year-old adult human. This could cause issues. There is also the matter of the seal that was on the back of my head. At this, Hiruzen flinched. He had tried to remove it, but it was so botched that he couldn't, and he couldn't get Jiraiya back into the village. He told Naruto just that. I suppose I can grant you forgiveness. It wasn't your fault you aren't good enough to fix a botched seal. A Hokage is supposed to be a jack of all trades, meaning a master of none, and that's what you are. If I remember from that book I read when I was still allowed to live in the orphanage, you are able to utilize all 5 elements, 3 Taijutsu styles, 2 Bujutsu styles, various gain jutsu, and you're a level 6 seal master. Very impressive, especially since you know 700 jutsu. Naruto would have smiled, but remembered that he couldn't really show it, so just tilted his head and squinted his eyes, tilting the mask upwards to make it appear as a smile. Since the old man had to deal with Kakashi Hatake a lot, this worked, and he smiled back. So then why are you back here, Naruto? Surely if you had someone able to train you in your new body, you would stay and train with them, right? Sarutobi asked, confused. Truthfully, Naruto had no reason to come back in his opinion. He would just be viewed worse as this new race, right? I need to learn how to harness chakra, and I rather like this village. The people in it suck besides a few, but I'm loyal to those few. Besides, all of the space-traveling craft are broken, so I still need to have somewhere to live. Naruto said this, but really he was lying through his mask. The spacecraft still worked, and the moment Naruto would have the skill to, he would steal multiple scrolls for knowledge on this world and leave. Luckily for him, the old man was too surprised and didn't notice the lie. Well, I suppose I can get you enrolled into the academy. Do you have more than one set of that clothing? You'll need clean clothes for the academy. The old Hokage explained, gaining Naruto's attention. I do, it's back at the base. Well, I'll give you some time to go get your things together and I'll get you a new apartment. Sarutobi said, but before he could go any further, he was interrupted. There is one thing I wish for you to do, Jiji. Naruto asked. I cannot be known as Naruto Uzumaki anymore. Could you create me as a new person? This surprised the wise Hokage, but it wasn't the most unexpected thing. If Naruto wanted to live in this village while looking like this, he would certainly need to be a different person. What would you like your name to be, Naruto? Hiruzen asked. Naruto thought long and hard about this, but eventually, he settled on a name that would honor his new master, while revealing nothing about him or his plans. Essel. After getting out of the Hokage's office, Naruto strolled towards the stronghold. He did not need to go to his old apartment, as he had nothing of worth there. He also just wanted to get away from paperwork. Apparently, there were 4 different forms you had to fill out to change your name, and creating a new life and alibi with the Hokage was tiring. Essel was now an orphan who had been experimented on by Orochimaru and confirmed to have not been a spy by many mind probes of the Yamanaka clan. He was 5 years old and was expected to enroll in the ninja academy in a year. He had red skin, yellow eyes, and was different from a human in a couple of ways that wouldn't be described. I'll now be calling Naruto Desel when he's interacting with people, as that's his new name. I'll also be referring to Bane's base as the stronghold from now on. Striding like a ghost in the wind, Naruto started to head for the forest. He would have to get a few pairs of cloaks so that he wouldn't become unhygienic. Luckily, the force enchantment his master had put on his hood was permanent and easy, so he could just ask for more. The entrance to the base, if he remembered, was near the tower in the forest. There was a tree about 30 paces away from the tower that had a disguised scanning pad with his fingerprints in it for him to enter. Walking up to this pad, Naruto pressed his hand to it and the door to the base opened, showing a hollow tree with a durasteel hatch that opened when he put his hand on the pad, which showed a ladder down to the base. Climbing down the short ladder, there was a turbolift waiting for him. Stepping out of the turbolift he just took, Naruto found himself in the hallway of the base. On his right was the door to the room his master woke up in, and on his left was the room labeled personal quarters. He knew that his master wouldn't be in there, so he walked past. Next on his right was the entrance to the hangar. The ships themselves were in perfect working order, as maintained by Athas, so this would not be where his master would be. On his left was the medbay. Athas was in there running tests, so Naruto strode in and asked his question. "Where is my master, Athas?" Athas almost jumped. Naruto had a way of being sneaky even without the force. "He is in the training room, Lord Naruto," Athas said. "Thank you, Athas. I need you to create 7 copies of my current clothing and put the darkness rune on the hood," Naruto requested, receiving a nod from Athas. "It shall be done, my lord." Naruto said nothing else and turned swiftly to walk away. Gliding towards the training room, Naruto heard a faint voice through his small force connection to his master. "I am in the training room, apprentice." Widening his eyes slightly, he realized that this wasn't some hoax or dream and that his force actually existed. Calming himself, Naruto walked into the training room to find his master practicing lightsaber combat. "Hello, my young apprentice," the Dark Lord said simply. Naruto kneeled in front of him while he arose and informed him of the recent events. "So, you have become Desel in the eyes of the public. Good, I like that. Informing the Hokage about me was risky, but it paid off, and now you can live here. We have 1 year to whip you into shape, and that's exactly what I plan to do. Now, you will need to construct a lightsaber. I will teach you about the galaxy, the Sith Empire, the politics, the Republic, and everything else you need to know in your sleep through our link. During the day, for the next year, you will learn to wield a lightsaber and use the Force. I will teach you all sides of the Force. I will show you how to wield the light and the dark side, and as many abilities that encompass that as possible. For the abilities I don't know, I have discovered the holocrons of GD Grandmaster Zim, GD Grandmaster Satel Shan, Bastila Shan, Sith Lord Ixer Kun, Sith Emperor Darth Vit-8, Darth Revan, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Malgus. At this, Naruto gawked a little bit. That was quite the list, and it would prove very useful. There were also instructions on how to use all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. The 7 forms are Shaicho, Mikashi, Suresu, Hateru, Shen and Gemso, which are both a part of Form V, Naiman, and Jio. The Safari explained this to his apprentice while still meditating. That was a rather large list, and to pick 1 or 2 seemed like it would be impossible. Standing up and opening his eyes, Bane started speaking again. "My apprentice, I will accompany you to the archive room. There, you will learn about lightsaber combat and the basics of the Force, the Sith Code, the GD Code, the basic history of me, Darth Nihilus, Darth Revan, and various other subjects that will help you decide what type of Force user and lightsaber user you would like to be." Naruto accepted this gracefully by nodding and standing up, following his master down the large and dark halls of the stronghold. -32 BBY, Month 1. It had been 2 days, and the year had turned. Naruto had learned many things during this time. Luckily, the language of Basic and the language used on Ebonir were actually the same. He had been able to learn much quicker than most, even surprising his master, resulting in him knowing the basic outline of everything that happened from 4500 BBY to the time of 980 BBY, the time when his master supposedly died. He had also learned the knowledge of the lightsaber forms, where he had learned that he had a photographic memory. He had learned about the codes of the GD and Sith, the theory around kyber crystals, the way to build a lightsaber, and the general force powers and rules of the GD and Sith. "Master, I have made my decision on lightsaber type." Naruto started, gaining Bane's attention and getting him to set down the book he was reading. "I have decided to construct a curved lightsaber and a saber staff. This will provide me with unpredictability, and I will be able to use my sabers in many creative ways." I have found that the color purple does not suit me and my beliefs on the codes, so I would like to use the curved lightsaber with a red kyber crystal and the saber staff with a green kyber crystal, not only representing balance by having both Jedi and Sith colors, but also representing the focus I will have on the Force with the green kyber crystal and the saber staff. That's not to say I want to be better with the Force and weak at dueling. Naruto finished and surprised Bane with the intelligence and thought put behind this decision. It was balanced, and it represented the future for his apprentice. Well, my young apprentice, we have materials for this. Come, we will pick your materials for your lightsaber in the storage room and build it in your quarters. The kyber crystals you are looking for should be in the enchanting room, I will get those while you pick out the materials and pieces for your lightsaber. Bane said while walking away. Naruto nodded and headed to the storage room. There, he found his materials. For his saber staff, the emitter was two mirrored sharp knife-like objects. Directly under the emitter was the grip. The grip was a large amount of leather, wrapped around silver durasteel. This was mirrored on the other side, with the activators for each blade in the middle, with the pommel of a one-ended lightsaber converted into a middle section with activators. For his single lightsaber, the emitter was made of durasteel, with a hook on the front side of the saber that went outwards, then towards the blade. The part where the blade came out flared outwards, and there were gold accents. It curved into a fully leather-wrapped grip and ended in a simple pommel. An. Count Dooku's emitter, a fully black version of Asajj Ventress's grip and her pommel. Her lightsaber was slightly rectangular, so it's circular, and also it's got the shape of Count Dooku's lightsaber. Now entering his personal quarters, Naruto saw his master patiently waiting next to his desk. The room they were in was simple, almost Spartan in fashion. It was a matte black floor with dark red walls and a matte black ceiling. It had a desk on the left side, a bed in the corner on the right, and a bookcase in the front left corner. The rest of the base had everything that one would need, so the room didn't need to be complex. Sitting down in his comfortable desk chair, Naruto set the pieces of his lightsabers down in order, looking to his right to see his master, his eyes filled with approval. His master set down the kyber crystals, 2 green and 1 blue. "Master, why is there a blue crystal?" Naruto inquired. He had asked for a red crystal, so for what reason would he be given a blue one? "Simple, my young apprentice. A red kyber crystal is very rare naturally, but your meaning for having one is to have a Sith crystal and 2 Jedi crystals. Sith create their red crystals by bleeding them or channeling their negative thoughts and force into a kyber crystal, changing its color to the red of blood," Bane explained, making Naruto nod. This would make sense, the Sith always seemed to do things in extreme or painful ways, this was just one more thing or tradition for them. Wordlessly scooping the kyber crystal into his hand, Naruto channeled all of his hatred and anger, all of his memories of the villagers beating and scorning him, directly into the crystal. The crystal began to float, then it shook, rattled like death itself, and then slowly bled to a crimson crystal. Setting the crystal down on the table, Naruto started to construct his curved lightsaber, while his master looked on, instructing him if needed. The individual components of the sabers started floating, spinning and aligning, creating the perfect weapon of destruction. Grasping the lightsaber, Naruto stood up from his chair and performed the basic Makashi opener, bringing his blade to the middle of his chest vertically and activating it, then twirling it to his right side. "Good, my apprentice. You are doing good. Construct the next lightsaber," Bane instructed, impressed by the ease Naruto constructed his saber, as well as how he handled it. "Yes, master," Naruto said, with that eerie modulation in his voice from the mask. Sitting back down at the desk, Naruto created his saber staff, grasped it, stood up, and positioned his body so that his right shoulder was facing forward and the saber staff was out in front of him. He activated the left end of the weapon first, then the right end. "Very good. Now, what type of force user would you like to be?" Bane asked, curious to the choice Naruto made. He was still a 5-year-old, the choice on kyber crystal and lightsaber types could have been a fluke. Luckily for Bane, it was not that type of day. "I would like to use the dark side primarily, but more or less be balanced. I do not want to lose myself in anger and hatred, but I would like to be able to use the abilities of a Sith," Naruto explained, hoping that this was possible. This outcome did surprise Bane a bit. He was expecting a pure child like this to want to use only the light side, to become a Jedi with no attachment and become dogmatic. This was the best outcome. "And the lightsaber style you wish to use?" Bane asked, hoping for the best. "I would like to eventually be semi-proficient in all of them, but I wish to primarily learn and use Jamso and Makashi for my single-bladed saber and Gyo for my saber staff. Jamso and Makashi gives me the most diversity, as Jamso is good for deflecting blasters and taking on multiple saber-wielding enemies, while Makashi is good against one enemy," Naruto explained. Bane was very impressed, but it made sense. He had not told Naruto what his specialty forms were, but these forms were almost a carbon copy of what Bane could use. If not for Makashi replacing Suresu, Naruto would end up being a copy of him on the battlefield. Good. I can teach you Gemso and Jio, but you'll have to learn Makashi mostly on your own. Bane grinned and they began training. -32, BBY, end of month 8. Naruto was walking through the forest of death, heading to the Hokage Tower. Over the past 8 months of his life, Naruto had been living in the stronghold. He had been training everything, his mind at night with his master and his lightsaber and 4 skills in the day. He was a bit taller, at 5'4". He had gotten to a level deemed as generally acceptable to his master's standards in Gemso for his single-bladed combat. So basically mid-level GD Knight Sith warrior. He hadn't started his Makashi training quite yet, but his Jio for his saber staff was going rather well and was at a high apprentice level. He had learned how to use battle meditation, but he couldn't move while doing it. He could push and pull to reasonable levels, use a solid force cloak, and he could use Sith lightning to a good degree. Walking out the gates of the Forest of Death, Naruto recalled what he needed to do today. He needed to sign up for the Ninja Academy and spend a bit there. He needed to learn about this world, but luckily in the past few months Naruto and Bane had practiced communicating through the link, while making it look like Naruto was paying attention and keeping his eyes open. That way, Naruto could learn with his photographic memory, while also learning from his master's lectures. This would make the days with useless academy information bearable and entertaining at the least. Walking up to the secretary's desk, Naruto simply asked, "Is the Hokage busy?" The secretary snapped to attention, remembering that voice from months ago. Shifting in her seat to a more stiff and straight position, the secretary responded by touching a small button under the desk and leaning towards a microphone. "Hokage-sama, Desil is here to see you," she said and got a rather quick response. "Send him in, Fuoka." The Hokage said in the tinny voice of the microphone, a far cry from the systems found on the CR-37's or Harrower-class dreadnought. With a nod from the secretary, Naruto, or Desil, moved on. Striding towards the door to the Hokage's office, cloak billowing in the wind he was creating with his movement, Naruto didn't bother knocking, since he knew it was redundant. He opened the door to the office. He didn't particularly like this man anymore, as he had discovered in his meditation, but he tolerated him. He may be misguided and weak, but he still made what he viewed to be his best effort at helping Naruto. "Ah, Desil, good to see you. What is it you're here for?" the Hokage asked, getting straight to the point. He could see that his intimidating and previously little surrogate grandson was not in the mood to be here, probably wanted to go back to training with his master. He couldn't blame Naruto for this, it made perfect sense. "I am here to enroll in the Ninja Academy. Where are the papers I can get to do this?" Naruto asked, getting a questioning glance from Sarutobi that turned into realization. Of course his blonde friend's master wouldn't be able to use chakra or train him in it, the stuff was localized to Earth with the chakra tree of old, meaning he wouldn't have access to chakra as it is an internal core. "Here are the papers," the old Hokage said, "just sign the bottom of the page, and remember that you're Desil to the public." Sarutobi finished. "I know what I am," Naruto replied darkly. He signed the papers quickly as Desil. "I will see you later." Naruto growled out as he strided out of the room. Walking towards his base again, Naruto bumped into someone on the street. "Watch it," came the sound of a small voice. He looked down and saw a raven-haired boy, the back of the hair looking like a duck's ass, with black eyes, a defined face with a bit of baby fat, and a black shirt with the Uchiha symbol on it. Oh yes, this little bugger was called Sasuke, if Naruto remembered that right. He also looked scared at the moment, although he masked it well, Naruto knew he was imposing. "Hello. I bumped into you. It was a mistake," Naruto stated simply, offering a hand to the boy. The boy slapped it away and got up, glaring at Naruto. "What's your name, commoner?" The Uchiha said this with the utmost confidence, getting over his fear rather quickly. Big mistake, although he would get away lightly. He felt a hand on his neck and suddenly they were in an alleyway, cloaked by darkness, with Naruto choking out Sasuke. "My name is Desil. My stature betrays me, but I am 6 years old. I am going to enter the academy tomorrow with you, and you will not remain a nuisance or I will remove you." Naruto explained this calmly, although the pathetic and overconfident Uchiha looked anything but calm, if anything he looked pitiful. He also looked bewildered, which made sense, he had basically just told the boy that he was a 5'4" 6-year-old. The boy nodded slightly, and Naruto put him down and walked away, making his way back to base. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.